Have you ever deleted photos by accident from a shoot before you made a backup? It's literally every photographer's worst nightmare, and in this video I'm confessing about the time when I accidentally deleted a whole photo shoot before backing it up, and I'll also tell you what the outcome was with the client and what happened in the end. And at the end of my story, to bring it all home, I'm gonna share a very expensive lesson I learned in the last month actually, where I lost nearly 2 years worth of my work. So this accident happened last year and I was shooting on location. Everything was great. I was happy with the content. And back then, when I'd get home from a photo shoot, I would take my sweet old time to copy things over from my SD card to my hard drive. Like, we're talking days. I didn't really have a set routine in place where everything would get backed up as soon as I'd get back from a photo shoot. And when it comes to location shoots, it becomes very expensive to have to rebook it if you fuck something up, as opposed to, say, just a studio shoot you can do in your own time at home. So during the location shoot, I was shooting for multiple brands on the same day. And what I was doing when managing my files on my SD card from that day, I wasn't copying them all across at the same time. So I'd copy and paste brand A to my hard drive, then I'd delete brand A files from the SD card, I'd edit brand A, and then I'd move on to brand B. I'd copy those files from my SD card to my hard drive, delete brand B from the SD card, and edit brand B on my computer. And this process took place across a couple of days. So then silly me comes back to the SD card ready to copy over brand C, only to find there is no brand C on my SD card because I'd accidentally deleted the photos while deleting brand B from the SD card. I hope that all makes sense. And no, they weren't sitting in my computer trash can, because I would also immediately empty my computer trash can as I was deleting files. Now, luckily there were no models involved with this photo shoot, and it was a 10-image photo shoot I had to deliver. So here is what happened next. Did I tell the client? Hell no. I was not going to admit that I had fucked up on a shoot and lost all the photos that I took where they invested money into the location and myself. So here's what I did. Luckily, I had another location shoot booked around that same time, so I paid for an extra hour out of my own pocket to retake the photos. And they actually turned out way better at this other location. I delivered the photos to the client loved them, and they were none the wiser that I'd initially deleted their first photo shoot. So if this ever happens to you as a product photographer, always give yourself some time before you tell the client to see if you can come up with a solution yourself. Most of the time, you're either going to have to refund the client or pay for another shoot out of your own pocket. The choice really becomes yours. But if it came down to those two options, I'd pay for it out of my own pocket to ensure my reputation as a photographer remains intact. So while we're on the topic of backing up your data, I want you to learn from this very expensive mistake I'm about to tell you. Now, last month, I lost nearly 2 years worth of both my client and personal work due to a faulty hard drive. Now, these worst case scenario situations, we never think that they're going to happen to us. Kind of like how I never thought I'd be made redundant or get fired from previous jobs, but both of those things happened. And I've heard horror stories of people losing all their work because of faulty hard drives, and I just always tell myself, well, that'll never happen to me. Now, one week, everything was working fine with this particular hard drive. I was accessing client work from it, and all was sunshine and rainbows, until the week after, I plugged it in and my computer just never picked it up. So initially I was like, oh, I'll just restart my computer, or I'll try it on an iMac, it'll be fine. It definitely was not fine. No computer picked up the hard drive, and I was starting to get into a state of panic. So we send it off to this data recovery place to get it looked at. We drop it off, and about 2 weeks go by and we finally get an email with the diagnosis. So I will just read you what they said. Following the initial inspection, the clean room engineer has informed me that your hard drive is suffering from an internal mechanical failure. which is a failure of one or more of the internal components crucial to the drive's operation, and physical media damage. This occurs when the heads come into physical contact with the media. Upon impact, the heads grind away at the magnetic surface, causing permanent damage. Based on the engineer's experience, he does expect to overcome the failures. However, at this stage, it is not possible to provide an estimate of the likely success, as further recovery work is required before a final result can be achieved. So here I'm reading this and I'm still panicking because there's a serious problem with this piece of shit hard drive, and there's no guarantee that the engineer will even be successful in recovering the files, but you know, they're optimistic. And at this point, all I'm telling myself is that there's no other choice for them but to be successful. So we say, okay, go ahead and do the damn thing, just get my files back. And throughout this whole process, we'll get an invoice for the data recovery. $2,090 plus GST. But you know what? So worth it to get all my stuff back. So what have we learned here? That you are not immune to hard drive failure, and it could happen at any time. So here's what I've done to implement a safety net when it comes to my data, so that if this ever happens again, I've got a backup and I don't need to pay an arm and a leg to get it back. So I bought myself a 12 terabyte hard drive, which I know that could fail as well, but it's less likely than this little piece of shit that I had. I also invested in a cloud software called iDrive so that all my photos are backed up to a cloud should anything happen to my hard drives. So I beg you, learn from my mistake and back up your shit. And yes, hard drives are expensive, cloud storage can be expensive, but guess what? It's even more expensive when you have to recover the data professionally, and it's a shit time knowing that you could have lost work that's really important to you. So in this situation, what happens if I didn't get my files back and there was client work on there, which there was. I had 2 years of client work on that hard drive. So when I deliver images to my clients via an online gallery, I will always tell them to download their photos immediately and save the photos somewhere safe so they have a copy of the files as well. I explained the online gallery will remain active for 3 months unless they're a long-term client. And in our contract, we state that we keep files on an external hard drive for up to 6 months unless something happens to that hard drive. Now, I don't actually delete client work unless it's very old and I don't see the need for it anymore. But this just gives me an extra blanket of security because I have had clients come back to me years later. They didn't download their photos or save them somewhere safe. And we do charge an admin fee to go back through all our hard drives, re-upload everything for them again because it takes time. And time is worth money. So I hope you like this story time and that you will implement strict data management practices in your own business to ensure that you neither delete files accidentally and that you keep your files safe on an ongoing basis. So don't be like me and not make backups of your files. If you have any questions, or maybe you have your own horror story of losing data or accidentally deleting a client's photo shoot, I would love to hear it. Let's have a chat. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.